The sky burned red with fire and smoke. Explosions shook the ground under Lyra's feet. Her breath was short, and her body ached. Blood ran down her arm, but she didn't stop. Her hands tightened around the plasma rifle. She was the last one. Still standing. Her squad was gone. Dead. Blown apart by the enemy's machines. She had called for help. No one came. Her commanders had already retreated and left her behind. She was just a low-rank soldier, a girl born in the slums of the Moon City, of Velkara. To them, she was nothing. But Lyra didn't stop fighting. Her legs shook as she ran behind a broken wall. Blaster shots flew past her head. She dropped to the ground, rolled, and fired back. One of the enemy drones exploded. 2 more took its place. She was out of ammo. She slammed another energy cell into the rifle. It sparked, almost dead. Her heart beat faster, her vision blurred. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her body was running on fear and willpower. The enemy was closing in. She could hear their metal feet stomping the ground. 10 maybe, or more. Her rifle wouldn't last through that. Still, she stood up. She wiped the blood from her face and took aim again. "I won't die lying down," she whispered. Suddenly, she heard something strange. Not metal, not a drone, not the enemy. Footsteps, heavy, measured, alive. She turned fast, ready to shoot. But what she saw made her freeze. It was a man. Not just any man. A human. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing worn-out armor. The plates were scratched and burned. His helmet was clipped to his side. His face had a scar running across it, but his eyes were calm, cold, focused. Lyra stepped back. "What are you? You're human." The man gave a small nod. "Yeah, and you're surrounded." She laughed weakly. "I noticed." He walked beside her and took out a weapon, an old human-made railgun. It looked deadly. "You gonna shoot me too?" Lyra asked, still breathing hard. He shook his head. "No. You fought well, but you're not alone now." Lyra didn't know what to say. She had heard stories about humans, how they disappeared, how dangerous they were, how even the galaxy's strongest warriors feared them. But seeing one now, in the middle of a war zone, felt unreal. The enemy drones spotted them. A loud alarm echoed across the field. "They're coming," she said. The man didn't flinch. "Let them." He knelt and placed something on the ground. A small disc. It blinked blue, then vanished into the dirt. "What's that?" Lyra asked. "Trap. Old human tech. Still works." She looked at him. "Why are you helping me?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned the horizon. "Because no one helped me when I was left behind. I don't leave people." For a second, her heart softened. She felt something strange, a tiny bit of hope. The machines charged toward them. 10, 12, maybe more. Lyra raised her rifle again, this time standing shoulder to shoulder with the human. "Let's make them pay." He smirked. "Good girl." The trap activated. A flash of light burst from the ground, an EMP wave. The first wave of drones dropped, crashing into the dirt like toys. "Nice," Lyra said, impressed. The human reloaded his railgun. "We'll hold this spot. Just aim and breathe." She nodded. Her arms still hurt, but she didn't feel so alone anymore. The rest of the enemy came in fast. The night turned into fire and smoke again. Together, they fought, back to back, a human and an alien girl. Two forgotten souls, holding the line when no one else would. And for the first time in days, Lyra felt like she wasn't fighting just to survive. She was fighting for something real, for the chance to win, for the hope that someone, just one person, might still care. As the last drone fell, smoking and twitching, Lyra dropped to her knees. She was exhausted, but she smiled. The human stood beside her, checking his weapon. "Name's Jace." She looked up at him. "Lyra." He reached down and offered his hand. "You did good." "Lyra." She took it. And just like that, her story didn't end alone in the dirt. It was only beginning. The fire still burned in the distance, lighting up the dark sky with flashes of red and orange. Smoke filled the air, thick and heavy. Lyra's legs felt like stone, but she kept walking beside the human who had saved her. His name was Jace, and he moved like a soldier, silent, alert, and full of purpose. She didn't know where he was leading her, but for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel lost. They passed through the ruins of a broken outpost. It was once a forward base, now nothing more than melted steel and shattered walls. Jace checked every corner, every shadow. Lyra watched his eyes. They didn't miss anything. "How long have you been out here?" she finally asked, her voice dry. He didn't look back. "Long enough to stop counting." That answer made her chest tighten. She knew what it felt like to be forgotten, left to die. But Jace didn't carry it like a wound. He carried it like armor. They reached a collapsed structure. Jace pushed aside rubble and led her down into what looked like an old tunnel. Inside, it was cold and dark, but safe. "Rest here," he said, lighting a small lamp. The warm glow filled the space with a faint hum. "I'll watch the entrance." Lyra sat, her back against the wall. The pain in her arms and legs returned as the adrenaline faded. She winced. Jace noticed. "You're injured," he said. Not a question, a fact. "I've had worse." He tossed her a small kit. "Use it. Won't do either of us any good if you collapse." She caught it and opened it slowly. Inside were patches, sealant gel, and a pain blocker. Human medical tech. Old but effective. She cleaned the wound on her arm and wrapped it. Still watching him. "You didn't have to help me," she said after a while. "You could have walked away." He shrugged. "Could've. Didn't." "Why?" Jace looked at her now, really looked. "Because I've seen too many good people left behind. Sometimes all it takes is one person to stand beside you." She didn't know how to answer that. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Not her commanders, not her squad, not even her own people. Jace stood and walked to the edge of the tunnel entrance, staring up into the dark sky. "You know," he said, "when I first landed on this planet, I didn't plan to stay long. Just a recon mission. But something felt off." "Off how?" she asked. "To quiet, to controlled. Like everyone was being watched." Lyra nodded. Slowly. "It's true. They track everything. Anyone who questions command disappears. I figured. That's why I never made contact." "You've been here all this time, hiding, fighting," he corrected. She stood up, her voice firmer now. "Then maybe we're not so different." He gave a small smile. "Maybe not." Suddenly, a sharp beep echoed from his gear. He moved fast, checking a small radar device on his wrist. His eyes narrowed. "Something's coming." Lyra's pulse jumped. "Enemy." He studied the screen. "Not drones. Something bigger." They moved quickly. Jace disabled the lamp and led her through a side tunnel. It opened into a chamber lined with old crates and shattered equipment. One crate was still sealed. Jace kneeled and wiped off the dust. Human letters were printed across the top. "Emrecon Vault 47. He glanced at her. "Help me open it." Together, they pried the lid free. Inside was a long black case. Jace opened it and whistled low. "What is it?" Lyra asked, eyes wide. He pulled out a weapon she had never seen before. Sleek, heavy, and humming with a low pulse. "Something I thought was lost," he said. "An old Earth relic. Railbolt launcher, silent, deadly, can punch through armor like paper." Lyra stared. Why was it buried here? This place wasn't just an outpost. It was a hiding spot for things the galaxy wasn't ready for. Footsteps echoed in the tunnel behind them. Lyra gripped her rifle. "We have company." Jace didn't panic. He loaded the launcher, aimed toward the darkness. A figure stepped into view. Not a drone, not a soldier. It was someone in full-body stealth armor, glowing slightly at the edges. "Drop your weapons," the stranger said, voice filtered and cold. "You're in restricted territory." Jace didn't flinch. "We were left to die. Now we're taking what's owed. You're not authorized to use that weapon." Jace raised the railbolt launcher. "Try and stop me." Lyra stood beside him, rifle ready. To people, outgunned, outnumbered, facing tech meant for war. But neither of them stepped back. And in that moment, Lyra realized something. She didn't care if they won or lost. She only cared that she wasn't fighting alone anymore. Not now. Not ever again. The tunnel lit up with flashes of blue as the stranger raised his weapon. Lyra could barely breathe. Every instinct told her to run, but her legs held firm. Not this time. Not when someone finally stood beside her. Jace didn't wait. His finger tapped the trigger on the railbolt launcher. A sound like cracking thunder echoed through the underground, and a bright streak tore through the air. The stranger's shield cracked, but didn't fall. The force sent him skidding back, armor sparking. "Move!" Jace shouted. They ran deeper into the ruins, weaving between broken walls and twisted steel beams. Lyra's heart pounded in her ears. Behind them, more movement echoed, more footsteps, more trouble. Whoever the stranger was, he hadn't come alone. They ducked behind a collapsed bulkhead. Jace knelt and pulled out a small device, scanning the space above them. "They're jamming exits. They want us trapped." Lyra glanced around, eyes scanning for a way out. "What now?" Jace pulled a small orb from his belt. "Now we make our own exit." He rolled the orb into the far wall. A few seconds later, it exploded silently, collapsing the stone and opening a narrow tunnel lit by glowing moss. Cool air rushed in from the other side. "Go," he yelled. Lyra crawled through first, scraping her arm on the rock, but she didn't stop. Jace followed, covering their rear. Behind them, the masked soldier shouted, but the tunnel closed with a controlled blast. They emerged in a dark chamber that looked older than anything Lyra had seen. The walls were covered in strange symbols, faded by time. In the center, there was a massive circular door, slightly open, humming with old energy. "What is this place?" she asked, staring in awe. "Human bunker," Jace answered. "Pre-galactic war. I found it during recon years ago." Lyra touched the symbols on the wall. They glowed softly beneath her fingers. "It feels alive." Jace nodded. "It is. The tech here is different." Almost thinking. Suddenly, the door groaned open wider, and lights flickered on inside. Lyra stepped in slowly, eyes wide. Rows of old armor, weapons, and pods lined the walls. One of the pods hissed open as they approached. Inside was a humanoid suit, tall, jet black, and made from a material she couldn't name. Jace ran his fingers along it. This was the prototype. My mission was to find it." Lyra looked at him. "You're not just a soldier, are you?" He hesitated, then nodded. "I was part of a shadow unit. We were scattered after the collapse. Some of us hid. Some were hunted. I kept moving. And now I fight for those who've been abandoned, like you." Before Lyra could speak, the chamber shuddered. Dust fell from the ceiling. The masked soldier had found another way. "We don't have much time," Jace said. "Help me activate this." Together they lifted the suit from the pod. Jace pulled a data key from his armor and slid it into a port on the wall. The room responded instantly. Lights pulsed. Air hummed. The suit came to life. Jace stepped into it, and the machine sealed around him like a second skin. He moved his fingers and the suit responded perfectly. "Now we fight on equal ground," he said, voice deeper through the suit's audio. Lyra grabbed a smaller weapon from the wall, a sleek plasma carbine. "Let's make it count." The chamber doors burst open. Four masked soldiers entered, armed and ready, but they froze for a second when they saw Jace. "That's impossible," one of them said. Jace didn't wait. He moved faster than Lyra thought possible, leaping across the chamber and striking one down with a crushing blow. Lyra fired at another, her shot hitting dead center. The soldier collapsed with a grunt. Blasts flew. Sparks danced. The air smelled like fire and metal. Lyra took cover behind a crate, breathing hard. One of the enemies closed in on her. She turned to fire, but he was too fast. A blur of motion, Jace slammed into the soldier, throwing him across the room. "You good?" he asked, offering his hand again. She grabbed it and pulled herself up. "I'm getting better." Together, they finished the rest. When the fight was over, the chamber was silent again. Smoke curled through the air. Lights flickered. Lyra looked at the bodies, then at Jace. They weren't ordinary soldiers. No, they were cleaners, sent to erase anything, or anyone, who finds what's not meant to be found. She shivered. "So why let me live?" He looked at her with something like pride. "Because you fought, because you survived, and because you're stronger than you think." Lyra stood taller, still catching her breath. Her hands hurt. Her heart raced, but she felt something deep inside now, something new. She wasn't just a forgotten soldier anymore. She was part of something, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming next. The night air outside the bunker was colder than before. The two moons above the hills cast a pale silver glow over the burned ground. Lyra stood at the entrance, her carbine slung across her back. Her armor scorched but holding. The sky was quiet for now, but she knew it wouldn't stay that way. Behind her, Jace worked silently. The suit he wore gave off a soft hum, like a living machine wrapped around him. He checked each weapon, each data chip, moving with purpose. Lyra watched him closely. She had fought with many soldiers before, but none like him. He wasn't just strong, he was patient, dangerous, and focused. How many more of those cleaners are out there? She asked, her voice low. Too many, Jace replied. They follow the same signal we picked up in that chamber, the one that woke up the vault. Lyra frowned. Then why activate it? Because it also woke up something else. Something they're afraid of. He tapped the side of his helmet, and a holographic map hovered in the air between them. Dotted lines stretched across the region, leading toward a set of red mountains in the west. There's another site, Lyra asked, stepping closer. Jace nodded. Bigger, older, buried deep. If we can get there, we might find the command. Key to control the weapon. No, he said. To control the war. Lyra stared at the map. Why me? Why bring me with you? Jace looked at her for a long second. Because you didn't run. And because I don't think they fear me as much as they will fear us together. They packed quickly and moved out before sunrise. The path west was rough. Burned fields. Empty watchtowers. Crashed drones lay like broken bones scattered across. The dirt, the air smelled of rust and ash as they traveled. Jace taught her more about old human weapons, how to spot traps, how to read old codes carved into stone. Lyra soaked in every word. Each step forward made her feel like she was waking up from a life she had only survived through. Obedience. Near midday, they spotted movement ahead. A caravan. For vehicles marked with council symbols, armed guards surrounded them. One of the hover trucks carried a locked cage. Inside, something moved. Something alive. Lyra ducked behind a rock. Prisoners. Jace adjusted the scanner on his gauntlet. One. Female. Not human. Not like you either. Reading. High energy from her body. Another soldier? No. She's not from any species I've ever seen. But the signal. He paused. It's the same one from the vault. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Then they found her first. He pulled out binoculars. Through the glass, the captive's face became clear, young, dark eyes, long silver hair, glowing skin that pulsed faintly like starlight. Her wrists and ankles were chained in glowing cuffs. She was not just captured, she was contained. They're scared of her, Lyra whispered. Jace nodded. Which means she might be more valuable than the key itself. They couldn't attack head-on. Too many guards, too much firepower. So Jace came up with a plan, classic human chaos. Distraction, divide, take what matters, and disappear before anyone realizes what happened. That night, when the caravan camped in a valley, Lyra slipped through the rocks while Jace set up charges. Along the ridge, at his signal, the sky exploded. With light, smoke filled the valley. Guards screamed, blinded and scattered. In the confusion, Lyra sprinted toward the cage. The girl inside looked up startled, confused. Lyra shot the lock, pulled the door open, and offered her hand. Come with me if you want to live, she said. The girl hesitated for only a second, then nodded. Together they ran, boots pounding against hard ground. Blaster fire lit the dark. One shot grazed Lyra's leg, but she kept going. Ahead, Jace appeared like a shadow, firing back and covering their escape. When they finally reached the high ground and slid into a hidden trench, Lyra collapsed, gasping. The silver-haired girl sat beside her, breathing hard, but unharmed. Jace crouched beside them. You okay? I've been worse, Lyra muttered, pressing her hand to her leg. The girl looked between them. You are human. Jace nodded. Mostly. And you? She asked Lyra. Just someone who was left behind, Lyra answered. The girl tilted her head. Then we are the same. They sat in silence for a while, catching their breath as the guards scrambled far below. Eventually, Jace turned toward the girl. Who are you? She looked into his eyes, voice steady. I am the core memory, the last spark of the machine that once protected your kind. Lyra blinked. You're AI more, she said. I am what remains of a war program that chose peace over extinction. They fear me because I remember everything they buried. Jace leaned back, his expression unreadable. Lyra whispered, then we're not just holding secrets now. We're carrying a weapon they can't control. The girl nodded. And the galaxy will change if you're brave enough to use me. For the first time since this all began, Lyra didn't feel like a pawn. She felt like a fuse, and the spark had already been lit. Wind howled across the barren plains as the three fugitives pressed on Lyra, Jace, and the silver-haired girl, who now walked freely beside them. Her name was Ressa, and she moved like someone who didn't belong in this world's silent steppes, eyes always watching the sky, like she was listening to something the others couldn't hear. Jace said little during the journey. He led them with sharp instincts, checking the map and scanning for signals every few minutes. Lyra stayed close. Teresa, still unsure whether to treat her like a prisoner, a weapon, or something else entirely. Either way, she had a feeling the galaxy wouldn't wait long to decide for them. They stopped near an old fuel station buried under the sand. Its roof had collapsed, and rust covered the metal walls. Jace stepped inside first, sweeping the space. With his weapon clear, he called. They entered and took cover beneath what was once a control center. Lyra dropped her pack and exhaled. Her leg wound ached, and her muscles were stiff, but the quiet gave her a chance to think. She looked over at Ressa, who sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, hands resting on her knees. She hasn't said a word in hours, Lyra whispered. She's listening. Jace replied, to what? Not sure, but if she's telling the truth, she might be connected to something we can't detect. Lyra turned back toward the strange girl. She said she was the last spark of a war program. Do you believe her? I've seen crazier things. Before Lyra could ask more, Ressa opened her eyes. They are close. Jace tensed. Who? The ones with fire in their eyes. The ones who wear masks, not to hide their faces but their fear. Lyra raised her weapon and moved toward the door. Jace tapped his visor and scanned the outer field. 3 dots. Fast dash moving dot incoming. Jace swore under his breath. They tracked us. How? Lyra asked. Maybe her signal, maybe mine. Doesn't matter. He loaded a fresh clip into his weapon and looked at the other two. We hold them here. Short, fast fight. They'll expect us to run. We surprise them instead. Lyra nodded, heart pounding. Ressa stood slowly. I will not run. Jace smirked. Didn't think you would. The first attacker dropped from the ridge above like a shadow with claws. His armor was black, edges glowing green. Not a drone. Not quite human either. Something twisted. Engineered. Jace opened fire. The creature dodged, lightning fast. Lyra rolled behind cover and took a shot. It clipped the attacker's arm. He shrieked but kept coming. Then the other two arrived. One carried a heavy cannon. The other moved like liquid, no sound, just motion. And death. They weren't cleaners. They were something worse. Assassins. Jace took the cannon first. A railbolt from his launcher exploded against the attacker's chest, slamming him into a wall. Dust and metal flew in all directions. Lyra focused on the fast one. She moved with the same rhythm, matching the creature's steps. When it jumped, she ducked, rolled, and fired up into its gut. Sparks burst from the wound. It collapsed with a hiss. Then the first one, the shadow, grabbed Ressa by the throat and lifted her off the ground. Lyra screamed and fired, but the shots bounced off his shield. Ressa didn't fight. She simply looked into the thing's face. You are afraid, she whispered. Because I remember who you were before they broke you. The attacker trembled. Do it, she said softly. He roared and raised his blade. Jace crashed into him from the side, smashing him through a wall. The shield shattered. The blade fell. Ressa dropped to the floor, gasping. Jace stomped the attacker's head once, twice. Silence. Lyra ran to Ressa, grabbing her shoulders. Are you all right? I'm still here, she said, blinking slowly. But they will not stop. I am awake now. They feel it. Across the stars. Jace leaned against the wall, his suit cracked and leaking energy. Then we have to move, fast. They gathered what they could and set off before the sun rose. Hours passed in silence until Lyra finally asked what had haunted her since the fight. Why didn't she fight back? Jace answered without looking, because sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't power, it's memory. Ressa walked ahead, still quiet, but something in the air had changed. The sky above was no longer still. A faint pulse, like a distant heartbeat, echoed in the wind. Lyra didn't know what it meant, but the look on Jace's face said enough, whatever. Ressa had awoken, it was calling others, and they were running out of time. The signal hit like a whisper across the stars, quiet, cold, and ancient. Jace stopped walking the moment it reached him. His visor flickered, readings jumping across the screen. Lyra noticed the shift in his posture before she even heard the sound. A low hum rolled through the valley, deep and slow, like the breathing of a sleeping beast waking after centuries. "What is that?" she asked. Jace didn't answer. He stepped forward, toward the ledge, his eyes locked on the distant horizon. Ressa stood beside him already, her glowing hair fluttering though the wind was still. Her eyes were closed, her lips moving silently, like she was praying or remembering. Lyra joined them at the edge, down below. Stretching across the cracked red plains was something massive, half buried in the sand. The remains of an enormous ship, or was it a building? Poked from the earth like bones, black metal, circular markings, the same symbols she had seen in the hidden vault. But this wasn't just a relic, it was alive. Faint pulses of blue light shimmered across its surface, moving in rhythm with the humming. "That's not a bunker," Lyra said. "That's a mind." Jace nodded once. "And it's listening." Without warning, Ressa stepped forward and began walking toward the ruins. Her body seemed weightless, like something unseen was pulling her. Lyra moved to stop her, but Jace raised a hand. "She knows where to go." They followed her down into the heat. As they got closer, Lyra felt a pressure in her head, not painful but heavy, like thoughts that weren't hers were brushing against her own. She gritted her teeth and kept walking. When they reached the ship's side, a section of the wall lit up. Ressa pressed her hand to it. Blue light snaked across the surface. A door hissed open, and cool air poured out. Inside was darkness, smooth walls, quiet machinery, and the scent of dust and something older than time. Ressa led them through a winding corridor until they reached a chamber where the air buzzed with energy. In the center was a floating sphere, suspended in a gravity field. It pulsed in rhythm with the signal. Jace stared at it, his voice low. "That's the command key," Ressa nodded. "It is a living memory core. If linked to a host, it can control every system this vault has, every drone, every weapon, every sleeping titan under the surface." Lyra's mouth went dry. "You said it could change the war." Ressa turned to her. "Only if someone survives." "The link." Jace stepped closer, studying the floating core. "What's the risk?" Ressa looked at him. "It doesn't just link, it absorbs. It pulls in your mind, your fears, your past. If you're weak, you disappear." Silence filled the room. Jace didn't move. His eyes stayed on the sphere. "No," Lyra said suddenly, stepping in front of him. "You've done enough. Let me try." Jace looked surprised. "You don't have to, I know, but I want to." Her voice trembled slightly, but her feet didn't. "I've been running from fear my whole life. If this thing wants to see who I am, let it." Ressa watched her with an unreadable gaze, then stepped forward. Lyra approached the sphere. Its light grew brighter. She took a deep breath and reached out. Her fingers touched the surface and everything vanished. Suddenly, she wasn't in the chamber anymore. She stood in an endless white space, cold and silent. Voices whispered around her, memories, regrets, faces she knew and ones she didn't. She saw her squad, dying one by one. She saw her childhood, starving in the moon slums. She saw herself alone, forgotten. The pain crushed her chest. But then, a hand reached for hers. Jace. Even here, she saw him. Even here, she remembered that she wasn't alone. She gripped the memory and pushed forward. The white faded. She opened her eyes. The chamber shook. The sphere had vanished. The ship around them lit up, systems roaring to life. Walls opened. Machines moved. Screens glowed with ancient text. Lyra stood still, glowing lines running down her arms, her eyes flickering with soft blue light. Jace stepped forward, stunned. You did it." "I'm still me," she said. smiling through exhaustion. But now I remember what they tried to erase. Ressa bowed her head slightly. Then you are not just a survivor. You are the voice they couldn't silence. But before anyone could speak again, alarms blared. A new signal had entered the region. Thousands of ships. The council had come. Jace pulled his weapon and looked at Lyra. Now that you have the key, they'll throw everything at us. Lyra raised her hand and the walls responded. Drones rose from hidden ports. Cannons rotated. Lights flashed. They can try, she said. For the first time, she wasn't the last one standing. She was leading the charge. The sky above the valley turned dark. Not from clouds, but from the massive shadow of incoming warships. Thousands of council crafts formed a ring of steel and fire around the horizon. From orbit to low atmosphere, they came in waves. Black cruisers, missile carriers, and drone swarms ready to erase everything below. Inside the ancient vault, Lyra stood in the center of a control chamber, her body pulsing with soft blue light. She was no longer just a soldier. The system had accepted her, bonded with her. She could feel the ship's heartbeat through her own. Jace paced behind her, helmet under his arm, eyes scanning the incoming fleet on the glowing screens around them. They've committed everything. Every faction ship. This isn't just a strike. They want you gone. They're scared, Lyra said calmly. They should be, Ressa added. Standing near the far console, her expression unreadable. Outside, metal towers rose from the sand. Ancient weapons once buried now breathing. Again, drones unfolded like metal wings in the sky, rising silently as the control system activated them. Lyra could feel each one. She didn't need to speak to command them. They moved as if they were her own hands. Jace stepped closer. We still have a choice. We could run, take what we've found and disappear into deep space. Let someone else fight this war. Lyra looked at him, her expression calm but firm. I spent my whole life being told to survive, to hide, to follow orders. And where did that leave me? Alone, Ressa whispered. Lyra nodded. But now I have a voice, and they will hear it. Jace gave her a proud smile. Then, we make them listen. The first wave of missiles screamed from orbit. 10,000 heat signatures locked onto the vault's position. The sand glowed with incoming death. Lyra raised her arm and the ship responded. A giant energy shield erupted over the valley, humming with ancient power. The missiles struck and vanished in silent bursts of light. Swallowed whole, the shield didn't even flicker. Above, the enemy paused. Their formation shifted, adjusting strategy. Inside, Lyra breathed deep. The core inside her pulsed like a second heart. She could feel the heat of every weapon, the position of every enemy drone. She could see the battlefield before a single order was given. Send the Guardians, she said. Massive towers burst from the hillsides tall. Humanoid constructs made of black alloy, their eyes burning like blue stars. They hadn't moved in centuries. Now they marched forward. The council fired again, cannons, plasma bolts, railguns. The Guardians didn't stop. Ressa's voice echoed from behind her. They will deploy ground forces. Special units, assassins. They can come, Lyra replied. We'll be ready. She turned to Jace. You still trust me? He laughed once, strapping on his helmet. You've already done more than 1,000 captains. I'd follow you into hell, together. They stepped outside. The sand was trembling now, shaking under the pressure of so many incoming ships. The air shimmered with heat and fury. Council troops dropped from the sky in sleek pods, kicking up waves of dirt and dust. Their armor was bright gold, polished, perfect, just like their belief in control. One stepped forward, his voice amplified. You carry something that does not belong to you. Alien girl. Lyra walked to the front line. No, I carry what your kind tried to bury, and I'm done being quiet. You are one against many. She raised her hand. Behind her, towers activated. Weapons spun to life. Machines growled. I'm not alone, she said. And then she moved. The first strike hit the council line before they even raised shields. Drones sliced through the sky in tight formation, targeting engines, comms, and leaders. Guardians crushed landing ships with one blow. Blaster fire filled the air. The sand turned to glass. Beneath the heat, Jace fought beside her, like a ghost in a storm, fast, brutal, and precise. Ressa remained at the vault entrance, her hands guiding support systems and drone paths. Feeding the battlefield with real-time predictions, Lyra became the storm. Every weapon she commanded felt like her own body, every shot, every move, perfectly timed. Enemies couldn't touch her because she knew where they'd be before they even pulled the trigger. And still, they kept coming. More dropships, more fire. But now it wasn't just her side holding the line. Signals came in from the outer. Systems, rogue ships, outlaws, deserters, all responding to the signal Ressa sent when she awoke. The galaxies forgotten were rising. Jace shouted over the comms, new contacts approaching, friendly marks. They're answering her call. Dozens of ships broke the sky, worn, patched, together, but armed. Some were human, some were alien, but all were angry. All had stories like Lyra's. The tide turned fast. Council lines shattered. Elite soldiers fell. Lyra raised her hand for one final command. Above, a silent beacon pulsed across the stars, an ancient message once meant to warn. Now reborn as a call to rise. The enemy knew they were beaten. Some fled. Some fought to the last breath, but none could stop the wave. When silence finally returned to the valley, the battlefield was covered in broken armor and fading smoke. Lyra stood among the ruins, her body trembling, the light inside her still glowing. Jace took off his helmet, walking to her side. We won. She looked up at the stars. No, we've just begun. Ressa joined them, her voice soft but clear. The galaxy knows your name now. Lyra smiled. For the first time in her life, not as a soldier, not as a number, but as a leader. And the galaxy would never be the same again.